Mark Rogers TV on college football, where sometimes one loss takes you from center stage off the radar. And that's kind of what's happened to the Clemson Tigers. Despite a 7-1 record, still a very fine football team, top 10 in the country. That Florida State loss kind of took them out of the BCS championship consideration. Now, here to talk about the Clemson Tigers is the guy that knows Clemson football like nobody else, Ryan Kantor of RyanKantor.com. Kantor with a K, also writing for ShakingTheSouthland.com, part of the SB Nation Network. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
So you've got an excellent football team in Clemson, but this is like no other sport when you talk about college football, especially with the BCS aspirations being what they were after the Georgia win and reeling off early wins and maintaining that number 3 national position. Losing to Florida State, unfortunately, not only puts them in a bind in regards to BCS aspirations, but also just in their own division to get the ACC championship bid, because Florida State has to lose twice to lose the tiebreaker. So that being said, Ryan, and the great expectations with the good start, where do you think this football team is in regards to confidence and mindset in trying to reach some goals that may still be out there?
First, let me say that is one of the things that makes college football the best sport out there. That one game, that one single regular season game has defined so much. And it stinks for us this year, but that's why every college football game is bigger than every NFL game, because there are no playoffs. Even when we do have a playoff, it'll be tiny, and that's part of what makes it so great. So I'll try not to get too bitter about the tough loss, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a future video. But last year we lost to them as well. They're a phenomenal team. They're great. It's a great program, and I hate to admit it, they're really good. So you can't get too down on yourself for losing to the number 2 team in the nation now. Last year we lost, and we went 8-1 after that loss, 7-0 in the ACC. So I don't think they're overly rattled. We're now 2 weeks out, and luckily we have a very poor opponent this week, and then a bye week. By then, you're almost a month out between that game and the Georgia Tech game, which is the next real challenge. So I don't think it's an issue. I really don't.
Yeah, definitely. If you look back at last year, you made your point there. Definitely the numbers speak to it, going, like you say, 8-1 and then defeating LSU in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. Very impressive out of the Tigers, despite some of the criticism Dabo Swinney receives overall for not winning the big game necessarily. That's really a way to bounce back in regards to rallying the team.
Yeah, let me add one note to that.
Yes, sir?
Florida State, I believe right now they're 3rd in the BCS, and wouldn't it be a bittersweet for them if they were to run the table and then end up going to the Orange Bowl because Oregon stays ahead of them, and they end up playing UCF, whereas Clemson is able to run the table after the loss, go to the Sugar Bowl, play a more relevant team, and really end up with the more appetizing bowl game.
Yeah, it definitely could happen, and we've seen that a number of times, especially not necessarily this year, certainly, with the ACC having 3 very strong teams, but in the past when there's been a somewhat weak ACC champ, but especially in the Big East, where they have sent some very marginal teams into the BCS, and then some 2nd and 3rd place teams from the SEC or the Big Ten are playing a much better team that gained the at-large bid. And we definitely have a good discussion coming up probably in the off-season about the college football regular season relevance and whether a playoff would hurt. And I mean an expanded playoff, because I think it could be done without hurting the integrity of the regular season or the magnitude of any particular game. It can be done. All right, Tajh Boyd, senior quarterback, just moved into a very exclusive club in the win against Maryland, 40-27, passing for the 10,000-yard mark, just the 3rd quarterback in ACC history, along with Phillip Rivers and Thaddeus Lewis. Both started in the NFL on Sunday, so Tajh Boyd gains that recognition. So he's had a stellar career at Clemson. Banged up, though, in recent weeks. Ankle issue going back to the Florida State game, and then last week banged up a knee against Maryland. Your thoughts on Tajh Boyd's physical condition and maybe how they will probably try to protect him going forward?
Yeah, well, Chad Morris admitted last week that he had game planned around not running him. And it's a bit ironic because fans for a while now have been very frustrated that we keep running Tajh Boyd, and he's such a big part of the running game. So last week we decided not to run him, and that's when he gets hurt. And of course it was on a run, but not a designed run play. So that's kind of just a rough one to swallow there. But he hurt his thumb against Syracuse. Some people were thinking that's possibly why he didn't play so well in the game following. And then he hurt his ankle, I think a little bit more severe than thumb, against Florida State. And then he hurt the knee against Maryland, I think a little bit more severe than both of them. So he admitted he's pretty banged up. I wouldn't mind seeing Cole Stout, our backup quarterback, get a fair amount of the snaps. I mean, I don't think Virginia is going to be very competitive with us. But Virginia is his home state. He's still kind of trying out for the NFL, which his stock's falling pretty quickly right now. So I'm fine with him starting. I think he'll be fine. But yeah, he's definitely banged up.
Ryan, we only have 4 games left in the regular season off to the 7-1 start. Any players that you see on the Clemson roster that have stepped up maybe in recent weeks, or that you expect to be main contributors down the stretch?
Yeah, well, we lost Sam Cooper at tight end at the beginning of the year, and we thought that was a huge loss, and it was. And he came back. He came back ridiculously early from a torn ACL. I don't know how he did it, but he came back and he's been playing. But I can't imagine he's 100%, and he has been quite himself. And so we've been using Stanton Seconder a lot at tight end, and he had a huge, really the game-winning catch against UGA. But recently he's really started to struggle and lost his confidence. But I don't want to get down on him. But last week, Jordan Leggett, that's Jordan, not Jack, who's our baseball coach. Jordan Leggett came up with a huge touchdown, finally broke through after we got stuck on field goals in our first 3 drives. And Chad Morris said he had planned some plays for him, and he really wanted to get him involved in the offense. He said that he presents some big matchup problems, and that we'd see a lot more of him moving forward. So I think he's a guy that Clemson fans could look forward to seeing some improvement from and some more contributions. On a little bit more negative a note, he did have an interview where he admitted that he was lazy and that he doesn't give it all he's got in practice, which is kind of jaw-dropping for someone to admit that. But he said he's going to work on it, which I guess is good. But to know that you're not working hard just seems unbelievable to me. But hopefully, that he realizes that is a maturity thing, and he'll move up from there, and he'll be a big contributor.
Okay, he is only freshman. Got another ACC regional telecast with ABC at 3:30 Eastern Time coming up Saturday against a pretty woeful Virginia squad that's 2-6, 0-4 in the ACC. Your thoughts about the Cavaliers this season, and maybe looking at the program as a whole right now?
Yeah, Virginia's been really frustrating. I keep picking them in my ACC pick 'em, and I just keep missing every week. It's unbelievable. And I didn't think they'd be this bad, but they are woeful. You said it. They are real bad. And their talent level is better than this. They're on Shaking the Southland, one of our writers, Figure 4, posts weekly depth chart analyses of us and our opponents. And now these are 2 deep depth charts using the rival rankings, and Rivals is a little stingy, and this is 2 deep. But our offense, Clemson offense, averages a 3.2 stars, and theirs averages 3.07. Not that bad. I mean, that's fairly close. They should be, relatively competitive. And our defense is 3.5 to theirs 3.08. So that's a little bit bigger. But there's no champion 3.08. That's not too terrible. So it's real surprising to me, and I can't really hate on Mike London because I thought it was a phenomenal hire out of Richmond, FCS champion. So I'm kind of at a loss. Their AD recently came out and said he won't be fired at the end of the year, which makes sense because they'll owe him, I believe, $8 million to buy him out, $11 million to buy out him and his assistants, and I can't imagine they have anywhere near that. I think maybe only Ohio State and Florida would have that kind of money to buy a coach out. So he'll be there for a little while longer. And he's got a good recruiting class coming with 2 5-stars, so the future is brighter, but I can't imagine they're going to be very competitive in this game.
Yeah, my thoughts on Virginia football, and I kind of like this segment because we delve back into history to a certain extent with some of these teams we talk about that Clemson faces from week to week in the ACC. Virginia has never been on top of the hill, but at the same time they they've consistently, through the 80s, through the 90s, and into the 2000s, pretty consistently won 7-8 football games, went to decent bowl games, and had a decent program and a decent following. Mike London comes in, and after the rough first season, he turns it around to go 8-5, get to a Chick-fil-A Bowl against Auburn. Pretty nice bowl game there for the ACC. Second place finish in 2011, loses to Auburn, goes 8-5, was gaining those big recruiting classes, so the future looked bright, but it's just not happening. This season, Ryan, they get off to a good start. They take on a nice BYU team, a team that's played some good football this season, and Virginia got the win over BYU 19-16, but it's all been downhill since then. They are really struggling. They are 100th in the country in scoring at just about 22.5 points per game.
Yeah, like I said, I keep missing them every week. I thought they would lose to BYU, and they won, so I figured, they're pretty good. And then I've been picking them to win. I figured they're better than Pitt. I figured they're better than Duke, and they can't win those games. So I don't know what their deal is, but if they weren't in this financial constraint, I would imagine they'd fire Mike London, but they can't. So we'll see what they do, but I imagine there will be very few seats and butts during this game, or seats and stands, sorry. And I think this is going to be another one of those games where we've got 15 straight wins by double digits against unranked opponents. I think this will be 16.
And your defensive ends may have a field day, and your secondary is probably going to get a workout because David Wofford threw it 61 times, 43 for 61 last week against Georgia Tech. So Virginia probably going to get in a bit of a bind and have to really air it out in this game against Clemson.
I would agree with you. Last week when they were playing Georgia Tech, I believe Georgia Tech had 5 turnovers, and they still won by 10 over Virginia, which is just unbelievable that you could lose a football game when you get 5 takeaways.
Ryan, one more thing. You had mentioned previously with the 7-1 record and being a fairly heavy favorite in the rest of the games up until South Carolina. That game's going to be pivotal, not obviously inside the ACC, but possibly for a BCS Bowl. What are your reasonable expectations, and what are you hopeful for breaking right for Clemson and getting to the best bowl game possible?
Well, if we play like we've played since Boston College, we'll lose to Georgia Tech, we'll lose to South Carolina, we'll go to the Chick-fil-A Bowl for lucky, and we'll lose to some SEC team. But I do think that we'll turn it around. I think we'll figure it out. I think we're a lot better than Virginia, way, way better. I don't see us losing that game. I think Georgia Tech's a serious threat, but we do have them at home. We're a lot more talented than them. We should win that game as long as we play marginally well. And then we have the Citadel, which is a FCS opponent we'll wash through. Now, the Clemson team that beat Georgia, I really think is a national championship kind of team. If we play like that, I think we definitely beat Georgia. I think that the Georgia team we played is better than the South Carolina team we'll play. So it's going to depend on what Clemson team comes out. We're certainly capable of beating South Carolina, which would put us in the Sugar Bowl, or if Florida State goes national championship, the Orange Bowl. Either one of those, and the season's a pretty big success.
Okay, if you follow Clemson football, even if you're just a general college football fan who likes to keep track of the top programs, certainly catch Ryan's work on Ryan Kantor. That's Kantor with a K, RyanKantor.com. He also writes for ShakingTheSouthland.com, part of the SB Nation network. Ryan, thanks so much for the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.